We've all heard about rising inflation rates and seen them in action. Everything costs more, and those price increases can really put a dent in your savings and affect how much you need to put away for financial emergencies. So, what can consumers do to stay ahead of inflation? I recently spoke with Ann Lester, who's a retirement expert. She spent 29 years at JP Morgan as a portfolio manager and was head of their retirement solutions division, to talk about the ways people could protect their savings in this period of increased inflation. Take a look.
Can you just kind of put into context for us what we're seeing with inflation right now and how it is impacting savings?
So inflation is taking a bite out of people's paychecks, and unfortunately the more of your paycheck that you're spending on things like gas and rent, things that are or food prices, right, that are really being affected by inflation, the more that's eroding your ability to put money away for yourself for the future or your rainy day fund. So it is a and the silver lining in that is that the parts of the labor force that are seeing the biggest wage increases are also the lowest paid folks. So, that's the only part of the labor force that's seeing wages stay in front of inflation are people that are really working hourly jobs. We've all seen the fast food help wanted signs, and they're having to raise their wages a lot. But for folks like just above that level, I think they're really feeling the pinch. And unfortunately, one of the first places that tends to be felt is, in your weekly budget. And, if you were coming out a little bit ahead and you could put some away, that's really hard right now. So it's tough.
Yeah. And I feel like so many people my age or younger, people in their 20s or 30s, already in a little bit of a precarious situation with their
Right.
savings. We've seen that stat where, a big chunk of people can't cover $400 in
Right.
emergency expenses. So, talk a little bit about your approach then and your framework to being able to protect your savings, particularly in a time like this when inflation is taking out such a big chunk.
It's hard to figure out when you're getting going how to adjust your lifestyle to your wages because this number seems so big. Like, oh my gosh, this is more money than I've ever seen. Of course, I can fill in the blank. And, a year or two in, you start going, whoa, maybe I can't do whatever it is. But then you've gotten used to it, right? So, one of the easiest ways I think to save, especially if you're struggling with making it work right now, is to give yourself a little bit of a break. I mean, yes, of course, think about the things that you may be spending money on that you don't care about. And, we can all pick on the how many streaming services do you really need to have? And I mean, the famous Starbucks latte versus making your coffee at home, like all that stuff, fine, do it, it's good. But the big things are your rent, right? And again, that may be something you feel like you can't control because where you live is connected to how much free time you have in your commute if you're still, working in an office. But the best way to really boost your savings is to make a commitment to yourself and find an accountability partner and promise yourself that the next time your income goes up, you'll save a huge chunk of that and not let your lifestyle creep up with your wage increases. And again, the good news about a lot of people in their 20s and 30s is that they are seeing fairly consistent wage increases. Now, for a little while, it may not keep up with inflation. Like that may take a year or so to get into balance, but really, probably after a year or so, that's all going to kind of catch up. And I'm not, I don't have a strong opinion about, the temporary nature of this inflation spike, but I do think we're not living in the 70s. And I do think that we're not going to see it like spiral for years out of control, whether that's 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, I don't know. But like if you can just chart out a course for yourself in the next 12 to 18 months, if you get a tax refund, save it, right? If you get a bonus, make sure you save at least half of it. If you get a raise, make sure you save at least half of it. And that way you will start crawling out of this hole. One thing I talk about a lot is the importance of emergency savings. And if you've got 3 to 6 months saved up, maybe you can take your foot off the savings accelerator a little bit and use that to pay for gas when you fill up your tank, right? So if you've already been saving this for the next few months until your wages and inflation kind of come back into balance, you might need to cut back on some discretionary spending, maybe not take a vacation, maybe take a less expensive vacation, whatever you were going to do. You can find a little way to trim, but temporarily, maybe if you've built up that really solid cushion, you can afford to take a step back. If you don't have the cushion, do not take your foot off that savings gas pedal, right? You cannot afford to let yourself get into that. I can't come up with $400 to fix my car hole.
Yeah, and I want to touch upon, because you mentioned the emotional aspect
Yeah.
of this, and I do think that is such a big component. And I know personally for me, when I was in my 20s, there is a shame and maybe a guilt around not wanting to, you just don't even want to look at it. And can you maybe talk a little bit about the behavioral aspect that plays into this, and why maybe introducing something like an accountability person could really help, just even facing the problem?
So we're wired to consume what is in front of us now and not to delay. Like we are built to grab what is in front of us so the saber-toothed tiger doesn't eat us, right? And run. And not to make rational long-term financial decisions. Like the overwhelming brain design is for today versus tomorrow. And study after study after study shows that you can even put a dollar figure on how much more you value today than tomorrow. And when you layer onto that, savings for retirement, which is what I really want to focus on, that person in 10 or 15 or 20 years, your brain literally thinks they're a stranger, because there have been some fabulous brain studies done that show that when you think of yourself in the future, like the distant future, like more than 5 years away, the part of your brain that lights up is the same part of your brain that lights up when you think about a total stranger. So I'm going to make myself feel pain by not consuming something I want right now and give my money to a stranger. Like that doesn't feel very good. So for me personally, just knowing that it wasn't some moral failing on my part, or that I couldn't adult, or whatever, like it was like, oh, I get it. All right, then I have to figure out a system. I didn't call it this 25 years ago, but I got to hack myself, right? I've got to figure out a way to accountability partner, automate, you know, make that promise to myself. And if you're lucky, you work for a company with a 401k plan or a financial wellness program that will let you tell them to take some of your next raise and increase it to savings, because some places will do that for you. Right. Those kind of tricks actually can help you get out of that hole. But I think the first thing to do is just say, hey, look, it's not because I suck at savings. It's because the whole consumer society we live in is wired to take advantage of our wiring. And that's a tough battle to fight. It's like not eating Oreos, right? Like who can eat one Oreo? Not me.
Yeah, and I think it's something, especially I feel like a lot of people that are kind of living paycheck to paycheck, I think once you can break out of that cycle, I think just having that confidence and getting rid of that anxiety really does make a difference.
It's transformational. And one of the things, people always say, yeah, but I'll miss the money. One of the things I find fascinating is how many people at all income levels stick with the program when they get automatically enrolled by their employer, right? So if you are lucky enough to work for a company that offers a 401k plan and automatically enrolls you, your first paycheck has whatever they start you at, 3 or 5%. Word to the wise, check that number and bump it up if you can, and bump it up systematically. But anyway, you get started, you don't even notice you're not getting the money. Like it never hits your bank account. You automatically adjust yourself to that salary. And when people get enrolled after they've been working for a while, so now there's states like California and Illinois that are mandating that every employer who employs more than, depends on the state, 5, 10, 20 people, gets automatically put in a Roth IRA at 3% typically. Even people at the lowest levels of income generally stick with it because they know they should be, right? They just needed somebody to help them get there. Now, the trick is if you're not working for that employer, you've got to do it to yourself, and that is an obstacle, right? So that takes a little more energy to get through that first hurdle, but once you start, it's a great thing.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching. You can leave your feedback in the comment section below. And don't forget, hit the subscribe button to get more videos like this. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.